Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Mulcahy, and I'm going to be going over my final project with you. It is analyzing the role of restorative justice in schools, particularly my middle school. So, just going over some quick background. My middle school is called North Tonawanda Middle School. It's a 7th and 8th grade school in a large suburban area outside of the city of Buffalo. Our student population is 90% white, so around roughly 10% minorities. We have 51% of the students who are economically disadvantaged, so there's a high rate of poverty in our community. Um, and we have two full-time resource officers between the middle school and high schools that kind of rotate. They're connected. Our buildings have a bridge in between them, so they rotate between the schools according to their schedule. Our current practices in regards to school violence, threats, fights, drugs and alcohol, those types of things, is pretty strict. It's a zero tolerance policy that we've kind of talked about this year. So the minimum suspension is 5 days, and then further action could be taken depending on the offense. So previously, this year and last year, there's been some small pockets of social emotional learning that have taken place through the forms of staff meetings, faculty meetings, and these kind of trainings. We had one restorative justice training last year. It was at the end of the year where COVID had kind of hit and we were quarantined, and nothing was done with it after that. So it was introduced, and then we never went back to it since I believe it was April last year, or March last year, sorry. So what I would like to see is our school kind of adopt this restorative justice approach and move away from the punitive zero tolerance policies. A lot of times, just from researching this final project, these punitive zero tolerance policies actually reproduce the same behaviors and can predict those same behaviors that you're trying to eliminate. Many times they don't get to the root of the problem or address what's actually going on in the student behavior. And it turns into a cycle of suspensions where you suspend a student, bring them back, suspend a student, bring them back, and it never really gets to the root of it. So again, we had small pockets. We had a trauma-informed teaching and learning training this year, quick, where we just kind of learned about stressors and things like that nature. But nothing has really been implemented into our school policy or district policy. Both the principals, counselors, social workers, and teachers that I talked to for this project have expressed interest in moving towards a more restorative approach. So people are really seeing the benefits of this restorative approach and seeing how it can positively affect school climate. So my interviewees, I interviewed the principal, vice principal, school social worker, counselor, and a teacher that I work with in the special education department. All in general, everyone saw the benefits of restorative approach, and our principals kind of saw the punitive approach, zero tolerance approach, as necessary, but did recognize, however, that they didn't always get to the root of the problem or didn't always fix student behavior, and would kind of still like to see these restorative approaches implemented in the future. So I wanted to go over, I pulled one question from each interview just to give you an idea of where these people were coming from and their perspective. So our principal said when he was asked, do you feel the discipline action is effective and why? So our zero tolerance policy now, he kind of believed that it's necessary, but would like to see some type of restorative justice practice being implemented in the future. He did kind of say that it sends a strong message to your school that these behaviors won't be tolerated. Safety of our staff and students is the top priority. And it really lets people in the community know where you stand on violence. Now, is it the most effective? Does it get to the root of the problem? He kind of recognized that as well, but he did want to give that strong stance on violence that the zero tolerance policies have. Our vice principal, when asked, do you see any areas of this disciplinary approach that could be improved, did recognize again that they would like to move more towards social emotional well-being, restorative justice practices, but he would like it kind of in a supplementary way to these punitive approaches. So still suspend and then add the restorative justice practices. A lot of people don't see these two as coinciding. They see them as their own groups. You can't have one intertwined with the other. It's either restorative or punitive all the way. And really, because they contradict each other in many ways. So our social worker absolutely wants to go to restorative justice. She's heard of it. She was really excited to be talking about it. Just went on and on about how it puts the emphasis on school relationships and trust between peers and students and respect that's shared mutually throughout the day, and really gets to the root and creates a positive school climate within classrooms. Our school counselor, just quickly going over this again, did recognize some schools around our area that have implemented these practices. For example, there's a school about 20 minutes away, neighboring our school, called Lewis and Porter High School. They've eliminated their in-school suspension program, which we currently have, and we send students to if they're misbehaving in class, but they switched it out with a de-escalation room. Allow students to settle down, reflect on their actions, amend the relationships, and then kind of re-enter with that in mind, with knowing what they did and how they caused harm to others and the relationships that we've built up through the year. Teacher recognized some challenges that we've had, especially during COVID. And I mean, the disciplinary approach might not be at the top forefront of issues that our administrators might be facing with everything going on. So they recognize that, dealing with all those issues, and then creating teacher buy-in. A lot of times it's going to be a fundamental shift. Excuse me. So a lot of times it's going to be a fundamental shift in pedagogy for some teachers. So seeing this might look like a soft approach, as our principals kind of stated they want to be strict. We're still trying to fix the problem though. So it's not really being soft on discipline. It's just kind of their viewpoint of it being soft. In reality, it's actually fixing and getting to the root of problems, creating less problems in the future. So everyone, just another kind of wrapping it up for these analysis, recognize the restorative practices and how they could benefit our school, and would like to see us moving more in that way. Just some research on punitive approach. It increases the likelihood of grade retention, dropout, and future delinquency, all associated with the school to prison pipeline. We also have a disproportionately, these consequences of suspension disproportionately affect certain groups of students like Black, Latino, Native American students, LGBTQ, male students with disabilities, English language learners, and students in large urban areas or urban schools with high rates of poverty. So these policies that we have in place now are actually discriminative and disproportionately affect these students in our schools. Our restorative justice practices allow schools to create individual solutions that are manageable for offending students to fulfill, allowing victims to receive closure and repair the harm caused by the misbehavior. Research suggests that restorative justice decreases suspension and behavioral incidents while improving school climate, particularly when embraced as a school-wide ethos rather than a targeted disciplinary strategy. So all in all, when it is approached in a school-wide fashion, everyone has buy-in, everyone believes in this restorative justice approach, it improves school climates, which ultimately decreases other disciplinary approaches like suspensions, bullying, and those dropout rates. Again, with this implementation, there's going to be challenges. The pedagogical practice, I like this quote a lot: when teachers are so entrenched in the policies and practices that value control and compliance over relational ecologies that nurture growth and well-being, there's going to be a resistance to that. So they're not going to be fully implemented, or they might be implemented but co-opted with a punitive approach, like how kind of my vice principal said he'd like to be suspending and then adding it. They don't really coincide. Again, teacher buy-in has to be school-wide, and schools have to fund, train, and give the teachers resources in order to be successful and confident in implementing these practices. So it's not just on the teachers. They have to be, they need administration, they need support, they need training on these practices. So all in all, we should be moving towards a restorative practice that emphasizes relationships within the school and how students can negatively or positively affect others in that ecosystem. It's kind of clear now after doing this project that suspensions should be replaced with these restorative practices, whether it's restorative circles, letter writing, mediation, check-ins, social emotional learning, trauma informed learning. All these things add up to this restorative justice approach. Here's my works cited. So I hope you enjoy, and that is my presentation on restorative justice. Thank you.